The Ark of the Covenant, Axum. The ancient city of Axum in Ethiopia thrived as a capital of the first Ethiopian kingdom founded at the end of the 1st century. Axum is also a Christian holy site. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church continues to follow early Christian teachings, practices and traditions. These 20-meter-high stone monuments standing in the center of the town are the tombstones of ancient kings. People here practiced an ancient religion before Christianity was introduced. This half-moon shape represents the god of the moon. Christianity was introduced to Axum during the 4th century. The Church of St. Mary of Zion was built at around that time. The legend on how Axum became a sacred site is depicted here. During the 9th century, the Queen of Sheba, who dominated this region, fell in love with King Solomon of Israel and had a son named Menelik I. Menelik I became the first king of Ethiopia. He acquired the ark containing the tablets of the 10 Commandments and brought it to Axum. The Ark of the Covenant was then brought to this church. The entrance to the sacred room where the ark is kept is protected by 2 angels holding swords. The sacred ark can only be seen by the public on the day of a festival. However, no one has ever actually seen what is inside, as it is prohibited to open the ark. This festival is carried out to celebrate the day when Jesus Christ was baptized. The climax of the festival is a large-scale baptism ceremony attended by the local Christians. This pond is believed to be the place where the Queen of Sheba herself used to bathe. At the end of the festival, many people jump into the pond and swim. It is certainly the highlight of the year for the citizens of Axum.
and a nation whose roots stretch back into ancient times. Ethiopia has been heavily settled, going far back into prehistory. Da'amet is the earliest known kingdom in this region, and was a contemporary of ancient Egypt and Nubia to the north. On the opposite side of the Red Sea, facing Da'amet, was the kingdom of Saba, in modern-day Yemen. These kingdoms appear to have had close ties, and some even theorize that they may have formed a single kingdom. According to Ethiopian tradition, this was the home of the legendary Queen of Sheba. She converted to the faith of Solomon of Israel, and bore his child, who returned to Ethiopia to rule as king, beginning a long line of Ethiopian kings, who claim direct descent from King Solomon. The Ethiopian Church today maintains the Ark of the Covenant was brought to this ancient kingdom during this period, and is being kept safely there under guard for more than 2,500 years. For unknown reasons, Da'amet gradually eroded into several city-states and successor kingdoms around 400 BC. One of these, Axum, would evolve into the first well-documented great power to rise in Ethiopia, and was able to unite the northern Ethiopian highlands beginning around the 1st century BC, where they established bases on the Ethiopian plateau and from there expanded. By the 1st century AD, they became a major player on the commercial route between the Roman Empire and ancient India. A notable Persian religious figure and scholar of the time regarded Axum as one of the 4 great powers of his day, alongside Persia, Rome, and China. To facilitate this booming trade, the Axumite kings minted large amounts of gold currency that became widely used and have been found throughout the Mediterranean to India. Around 325 AD, the king Ezana converted to Christianity, making it the state religion, and was also the first state to ever use the image of the cross on its coins. Ezana campaigned against the kingdom of Kush to the north, as far as the borders of the Roman province of Egypt, and is believed to have been the reason for that 1,000-year-old kingdom's collapse. Included in his many titles were King of Kings, King of Saba, King of Salhen, and King of Himyar, which are all in modern-day Yemen, indicating that he either controlled or annexed these kingdoms, or perhaps they were merely tributaries. The kingdom of Axum would reach its apogee during the reign of King Caleb, who invaded the Arabian Peninsula in 520, with a vast army against the Jewish king Yusuf of Himyar, who had been persecuting the kingdom's Christian population. 5 years after installing a native Christian viceroy, one of his own Axumite generals killed the viceroy and declared himself king of Himyar. This general turned king, Abraha of Himyar, is mentioned in the Quran for his failed invasion of Mecca in the year 570. The rise of the Arab Empire would signal the decline and eventual demise of both of these kingdoms. Axum was completely cut off from any contact with the Christian Roman Empire and the vast revenues generated from Roman trade. The kingdom of Axum had a slow decline and began to contract back into the highlands. The kingdom of Alodia formed on its northern border and converted to Coptic Christianity and spoke a Nubian dialect, in contrast to Axum's Semitic dialect and script, used since the days of Da'amet in the 9th century BC. According to Ethiopian tradition, around the year 1000, a female pagan warlord overthrew the kingdom of Axum, laying waste to the land, burning ancient churches to the ground, and hunting down all members of the royal family of Axum. The last of her dynasty, which ruled over a much diminished kingdom, was overthrown by Maratakla Haymanot in 1137, establishing the Zegwe dynasty, although some scholars believe this dynasty was established earlier. The most famous ruler of Zegwe dynasty was Gebre Lalibela, who constructed 11 churches, carved straight from a single piece of stone, and attempted to construct a new Jerusalem as his new capital, in response to the capture of the Old Jerusalem by the Muslims in 1187. Despite the piousness of the Zegwe, they had one thing working against them in the eyes of many of their subjects. They did not claim direct descent from the biblical King Solomon, and around the year 1270 they were overthrown by a dynasty that did claim Solomonic descent. This Solomonic line of kings ruled Ethiopia for more than 700 years, with a brief interruption during the 14-year Abyssinian Adal War, in which the Adal Sultanate was able to annex Ethiopian Abyssinia with Ottoman help, only to be beaten back to their original borders by the Ethiopians with Portuguese assistance. The Age of Princes was a period in Ethiopian history from 1769 till 1855, when the country was de facto divided within itself into several regions, with no effective central authority. It was a period which the emperors from the Solomonic dynasty were reduced to little more than figureheads, confined to the capital city of Gondar, and local warlords fought each other for supremacy. This came to an end with the reign of Tewodros II, who re-established his dynasty's authority over the nation. However, this respite was short-lived, and he would commit suicide instead of being taken prisoner by a British expedition. The British would sack the Ethiopian capital and carry the Solomonic dynasty's crowns and treasure they had accumulated over the centuries back to Britain. Ethiopia's troubles were not over, and in 1874, the Ottoman-backed Ismail Pasha of Egypt invaded Ethiopia with the goal of creating an empire that would include the entire length of the Nile River. His sizable army included a large number of recruited American and European officers. The Ethiopians had been working hard on organizing and modernizing their military since their experience against the British, and were able to utterly defeat the Egyptians in 2 decisive battles. The Ethiopian Emperor Yohannes would die in battle against a Sudanese raiding force 13 years after defeating the Egyptians. His successor, Menelik II, would expand the Ethiopian Empire and defeat a full-scale Italian invasion. The technologically superior Italians were decisively defeated in a bloody war that they expected to be a casual affair. 40 years later, masterminded by the Italian journalist turned dictator Benito Mussolini, the Italians invaded again, this time sending an overwhelming force of approximately 500,000 men, 600 aircraft, and 800 tanks. Despite this, the war was still a long and bloody affair. The Italians gained little from the annexation and committed widespread atrocities against the Ethiopian population, which they never fully managed to control. Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie returned to Ethiopia from exile in England to help rally the resistance. The British began their own invasion in January 1941 with the help of Ethiopian freedom fighters. The last of the organized Italian resistance in Italian East Africa surrendered in 1941, ending the Italian rule. The Solomonic monarchy was fully restored after the war. In the decades that followed, Haile Selassie would begin to slowly implement democratic reforms in the nation. However, many blamed his grasp on power for the slow pace of modernization. During the Cold War, Selassie received the backing from the United States, and when widespread drought and famine hit the nation in 1974, the aged monarch was overthrown by a socialist faction in the military. They viewed Selassie as an agent of the corrupt capitalist West, and united with Eritrea, forming a larger chaotic state that was plagued by infighting and disastrously planned and implemented socialist policies. Eventually, Mengistu Haile Mariam brought an end to the more than decade-long power struggle and attempted the creation of a state following the Soviet model, famines and genocide included. In 1991, as rebels closed in on the capital of Addis Ababa, he fled and was granted asylum in Zimbabwe as an official guest of Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, where he still resides today at the age of 80, despite calls for his extradition. This was followed by a transitional government in Ethiopia, which drafted a new constitution allowing any of the nation's ethnic regions to secede if they ever wanted to. Eritrea did so right away, and the remainder is the modern nation-state of Ethiopia. This has been Epimetheus. Huge thanks to all my awesome patrons over on Patreon who help me with this channel's expenses, and my fantastic subscribers. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to sub, hit the bell icon to get notifications every time I make a new video, and smash that like button. One more interesting bonus fact for you if you made it to the end of the video. The Rastafari religion, originating in Jamaica in the 1930s, regards Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie as the second coming of Christ and the embodiment of Jah on earth.